They think you don't understand. They explain things to you slowly, carefully, like you're a child who needs help connecting the dots. They underestimate you in meetings. They talk over you. They assume you're harmless, safe, not a threat. And you let them, you nod, you smile. You ask questions you already know the answers to. You downplay your insight. You hide your intelligence behind a mask of confusion, agreeability, or silence. Psychology calls it imposter syndrome, low self-esteem, lack of confidence. Jung called it the strategic fool, and it exists for a reason. Because you're not hiding your intelligence by accident, you're hiding it on purpose. Not consciously maybe, but strategically. Because somewhere in your history, being smart became dangerous, being perceptive made you a target, and you learned that survival meant playing dumb, and now you can't stop, even when the danger is gone, even when hiding is costing you everything. Before we go deeper, understand this: playing dumb isn't weakness. It's one of the oldest survival strategies in human history. Every culture has stories of the clever fool, the court jester who mocked the king and lived because he hid his intelligence behind humor, the trickster who survived by appearing harmless while seeing everything, the servant who played ignorant while secretly controlling the game. In mythology, Odysseus feigned madness to avoid war. Brer Rabbit played weak to escape the trap. The wise fool in King Lear was the only one who could speak truth because everyone thought he was too stupid to be dangerous. These aren't just stories, they're survival strategies encoded into human psychology, because intelligence, when revealed, makes you visible, powerful, and in certain environments, that visibility gets you destroyed. Jung understood this pattern. He saw how people hide their sharpest perceptions behind social masks, not out of cowardice, but out of intelligence, because sometimes the smartest thing you can do is make people think you're not that smart. But here's the trap: what starts as protection becomes prison. You hide your intelligence so well that you forget it's there. You perform stupidity so convincingly that you start to believe it, and the mask you wore to survive becomes the cage that keeps you small. Let me show you exactly how this pattern gets installed, because you weren't born hiding. You were taught to hide, through 1,000 moments where intelligence was punished and ignorance was rewarded. Maybe you were the kid who saw too much, who pointed out the lie at the dinner table, who asked the question that exposed the family secret, and you were shut down hard. Don't be smart, mind your business, you think you know everything. So you learned being perceptive is dangerous, noticing makes you a target. The smart move is to pretend you don't see. Or maybe you were smarter than the adults around you, and instead of being celebrated, you were punished for it. Mocked, called a know-it-all, a show-off, too big for your britches, so you learned to shrink, to play dumb, to let adults feel smarter than you even when they weren't, because their ego was more important than your truth. Or maybe you grew up in an environment where intelligence was threatening, where being smart meant you'd leave, you'd outgrow them, you'd expose how small their world was, so they sabotaged you, told you weren't that smart, that you were average, that you shouldn't aim too high, and you internalized it, not because you believed it, but because staying small kept you safe, kept you belonging. Or maybe you learned that intelligence made you lonely. The smarter you were, the fewer people could relate to you. The more you saw, the more isolated you became, so you dumbed yourself down. You pretended not to understand things. You laughed at jokes that weren't funny. You participated in conversations that bored you to tears, because fitting in felt better than being right. Or maybe you were a woman in a world that punishes female intelligence, a person of color in spaces that only value white intellect, someone whose intelligence didn't fit the narrow box of what smart was supposed to look like, so you hid it, because revealing it meant dealing with hostility, jealousy, or being labeled threatening, and it was easier to be underestimated than constantly having to prove yourself. Or maybe you just learned early that smart people get used. They get more work, more responsibility, more expectations, and no more reward, so you played dumb to avoid the exploitation, to protect your energy, to make sure people didn't pile everything on you just because you could handle it. Any of this landing because playing dumb isn't stupidity, it's adaptation. It's what happens when you realize that intelligence without protection is a liability, and the smartest survival strategy is to hide how much you actually see. So what does the strategic fool look like in adulthood? How do you know if this is your pattern? First, you undersell yourself constantly. In job interviews, you downplay your skills. In relationships, you hide your depth. In conversations, you pretend things are more complicated than they are. You ask clarifying questions when you already understand. Second, people are shocked when they discover how smart you are. I had no idea you were so insightful. Shrug it off. Oh, I just got lucky. I don't know that much. It's not a big deal. But it is a big deal. Third, you're exhausted from performing, because playing dumb is work. You're constantly monitoring yourself, calculating how much to reveal, how smart to seem without being too smart. Fourth, you avoid leadership, promotions, visibility, because leadership requires you to be seen as competent, smart, authoritative, and that feels dangerous, so you stay in the background, you support. Fifth, you resent the people you're protecting, because let's be honest, you're not just hiding, you're managing other people's egos. You're making them feel smart by pretending you're not, and deep down you resent them for it, for needing. Now let's talk about what's hiding beneath all of this, because the strategic fool has a shadow, and that shadow is the intelligence you've disowned. Because here's the truth, you're not actually protecting yourself by hiding, you're protecting everyone else from feeling inadequate. Strategic fool's greatest irritation, people who flaunt their intelligence, who show off, who need everyone to know how smart they are. You judge them, you think they're arrogant, insecure, compensating. But that's projection, what you're actually seeing in them is the part of yourself you've disowned. So you stay hidden, you keep playing dumb, you keep letting people underestimate you, and you tell yourself it's strategy, but it's not strategy, it's fear. Fear that if people see how smart you are, they'll reject you, use you, destroy you. The cruelest part, the longer you hide, the harder it becomes to stop, because now you have a reputation. People know you as the agreeable one, the humble one, the one who doesn't make waves, and revealing your intelligence now would shatter that image. So out playing dumb, it doesn't just limit you, it destroys you. Because intelligence that's never expressed doesn't disappear, it turns inward, it becomes anxiety, depression, rage. First, you double down on the performance. Second, you explode. So how do you integrate the strategic fool, a real life on self-abandonment? So stop pretending you don't understand. Stop asking questions you already know the answers to. Stop letting people explain things to you that you figured out years ago. Your intelligence isn't dangerous. It never was. It was just surrounded by people who couldn't handle it. Jung explored how the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and you can't become who you are while you're still pretending to be less, while you're still hiding your sharpest perceptions, while you're still convinced that being smart means being alone. That's not intelligence, that's fear wearing a disguise, and the disguise is suffocating you. And the next choice you make today, not someday, is where this pattern either ends or deepens. Do you shrink one more time to make someone comfortable, or do you finally let yourself be seen? Notice the next time you're about to downplay your intelligence, that impulse, that's the wound talking, and you get to choose whether you obey it or finally honor what you actually know.